Loka Shimu Kwara, and welcome to In Taiwan We Speak, your audio guide to Taiwan's mind-blowing linguistic diversity. I'm Alexander Shin, and this is the last part of our conversation with Eri Liao, a Atayal-Japanese jazz singer. Now, Eri, I've read that you were studying in New York when your grandmother passed away.
Yes.
And then you did something. You dropped out of Columbia University. I know that's not a usual thing to do for a Taiwanese person, to drop out of Columbia University.
If I Where's money? Your family will kill you.
A big pivot indeed, yeah. So if I may ask, why did your grandmother's passing affect so much your because then you left and you became a musician?
Yes.
Right? So why?
Yeah, I have to tell a little bit of a long story, but it has a lot to do with why I went to New York. Before I went to New York, I was studying in Japan. That year, I was in graduate school in Tokyo, and something happened in my life, and I was like, I think I want to do music. So I had that already in my mind. But then, so I started taking like piano class, and I started doing some like little gigs, but I really wanted to do more. I wanted to do it more like, I want to take it really serious. So I thought, I just thought maybe I was crazy. I just thought I have to go to New York because if I want to study jazz, that's where everything is happening. It's the fastest way to learn the music and the culture. So I did whatever job I could think of to make the money. And then I looked into applying for music school. But one, music school is so expensive, and if you have to start from undergrad, it sounded so long. And at that time I was approaching 30. So now it sounds young to me, but at that point I was like, I'm going to be 30 soon. I don't want to go back to undergrad. So I dropped the idea of going to music school. I think my music level wasn't that great at that point. I could play some piano, but maybe not good enough to pass the test, the auditions. So I decided I would go to New York, and I'll see what will happen. So I applied to Columbia. That doesn't make really sense to me looking back, but I did. I was into writing, and I wanted to write about indigenous Taiwanese culture, and that what I was doing in Tokyo as well. But so I thought maybe I can, and if I am the good thing about the writing program is you don't have to take, what is the test, like GRE, like all these tests. Yeah. You just write a couple essays about what you want to write about, and if they like the essays, you're in. So I was like, probably I can do this one, because I know like there are not too many people writing about indigenous Taiwanese cultures in English, and applied to Columbia. So I wrote them, and I got in. At least I got the student visa from Columbia, and I think this one will work. I can go there and study writing because I like writing anyways, and I can go to workshops and take lessons in New York since there are so many great jazz musicians there. So I went there. But Columbia was not that easy, and all my classmates are people from there, and they want to be writers or poets, so they write great writings. And I'm this one who came from Japan or Taiwan, and my English was not that good, so I had to have a tutor. He was my classmate, very kind classmate, kind enough to be my tutor, to correct every grammatical errors, and give, he was just amazing, but he gave me a lot of work. The school already gave me a lot of work, and then he gave me a lot more homeworks.
And you wanted to learn jazz.
Right. So I was like, I wasn't sure what I was doing, but I kept going to the workshops, the only thing basically I could do. But it was so busy, and I liked writing it, so I was kind of happy, but I was missing the big point. You just pointed out. That was during the summer vacation, so I went back to Taiwan. And I was staying with my grandmother. I mean, I always loved her, but there's one, and she has some like famous, everyone in my family knows some famous quotes from my grandma, and one of them is, "You must dance. you must sing. No, you must sing, you must dance. 歌いなさい、踊りなさい. It's in Japanese. She says this in Japanese to my family. It doesn't matter if they understand or not. That's that's the way she expresses herself. And she said, we must sing, we must dance. She just always said that. And that really sticks with me. And that's probably why I went to New York. At Columbia in the writing program, you have to finish a book-length work to graduate. And I was trying to write a book about indigenous Taiwanese based on my interviews or regular conversations with my grandma. So I went back to Taiwan that summer basically for that interviews, and then she passed away. So that book couldn't happen because she's not there. And then that really made me realize why, first of all, I went to New York. It wasn't to write the book. It wasn't because I wanted to do interviews with her. I wanted to sing. So I was like, okay, just do what you have to do. Girl, quit the school and start singing. So I quit the school. Then I think I could keep the visa for 1 more year. I don't have to
so
go.
You stayed in the
States.
I
stayed. Yeah, till it expired.
And that's how it all began.
That's how it all began.
And now you're releasing your album in 2 months.
Yeah. Oh.
Wow. Yeah, we mentioned Taipei, we mentioned Tokyo, there was also New York.
Right.
Which place now feels more like home?
Taipei, 100%.
You did mention you spent now more time here than before, right?
At some point in my life, Japan was on the top. I think the longest must be in Tokyo, right? Yeah.
What are some of the things that you really missed about Taiwan, Taipei specifically, or Ilan, while you were not here?
The family gatherings. Yeah, I grew up in a big family, in a really close family. It's positive, and it's also, the positive side is, it's nice to have a really close family, but I think we could only be close at that time because we were, in the 70s and 80s, indigenous people. We were not even indigenous people. I think we were called mountain patriots,
Yeah.
So, we were basically denied so many human rights. So we could only survive by being close and somehow find a way to just live. It's nice to have a really close family. That's what I really missed when I left Japan. I left Japan when I was 8. My mom immigrated with me. She took me to Japan basically to live with my father. But that means suddenly I had a life with no cousins, no aunties, no grandma, no grandpa, and just me and my mother. And my parents were not really close, so their marriage was not really stable. So usually it's just me and my mom. And it was really different, really different kind of life. So I really missed everything in Taiwan. My mom came back here first, but I think I was still at school when she came back. Since then, I just came back to Taiwan when I find time.
Now we're nearing the end of our final episode, and with your permission, I would like to dedicate this, my last question, to the person about whom I think we haven't talked enough on this show, your grandmother.
Oh.
Now, before we leave, if you could describe and introduce your grandma to our audience, sort of to let us meet her before we close the episode, what would you say?
She was a very talented person who happened to be born during the very complexity of modern Taiwan history. When she was born, she was just Diane. And then she went through the Japanese colonization. And then there is this
Republic of
the
China.
Republic of China. And then this, yes, for her maybe the mountain patriot period. And then she became indigenous period. And so she had to adapt to so many changes that I can't even imagine. And it's relentless. It kept coming and coming and coming. And I can only imagine how hard that could be for her. But in my memory, she's a very cheerful person that I love the most. And she even talked to me about like when she tried to like, commit a suicide, but in a funny way. And like,
as in,
yeah, she like the biggest joke of her life. And yeah, and you know, I was a kid, so I didn't really take it so serious. I was like, my own grandma was like making this stupid joke, ha ha ha. But when I thought about it, I knew it wasn't a joke. And yeah, so she was born as a Tayal woman. And in our traditional culture, like in many traditional cultures, women were seen as not important, or women should just take care of the family. She was brought up that way. And then Japan came. And I could imagine that it could be something very refreshing for her. Well, Japan is also like very conservative that way, even now. But at least to her, to have some very new, very different culture in her life all of a sudden. And I remember her telling me about how she was amazed at kimono of Japanese women. You know, very different kind of fashion suddenly came into the village, and she was like, wow, that looks so cool. And she said she was talking with her friends that one day she heard this rumor that the government, the Japanese, will give them Japanese names. And it wasn't a rumor because it was part of the assimilation. But for a kid, it could be something so interesting or so exciting. I'm trying to imagine, you know, maybe one day suddenly like the India tried to, you know, to colonize here in Taiwan, and they'll give us Indian names. And I was like, probably I'll be like, oh, what Indian name can I have? I don't even know any Indian names. And I remember my grandma, she tried to imagine like what Japanese name she could have. She got friends with all these Japanese women, and she learned the technology of that time. And that could be something really exciting for her, and some kind of like she can escape from this old traditional, sometimes really suffocating culture. So she studied and she became a midwife. That must be something really rare and tough. She must have put a lot of effort into it, and she got and then she became this indigenous woman who has her own job, and that wasn't allowed in Tayal culture back then. It's probably what Shak has told you about Gaga, are like laws and taboos, and it was a taboo for a Tayal culture back then for a unmarried woman to spend time alone with a man who is not your husband, or who's someone who's not going to be your husband. And she had to work with a Japanese doctor, because no matter how hard you work, you couldn't be a doctor as an indigenous woman in that period of time. So she could only work as a nurse or midwife, and she has to be in pair with a Japanese doctor. And that was a big no-no. That was a huge taboo in Tayal culture. So what happened was, you know, that it wasn't too long ago that we really did the head hunting. So she was working one day at the clinic at the village. And then all the men from her family came to the clinic with a big knife. And they just collapsed everything at the clinic. I don't think they did anything to the people, but you know, that could be something really expensive and really important. Her job was she took this Japanese doctor because she know how to walk in the mountains. So she was in a pair with this Japanese doctor, and they visited village by village, and they offer the medical support to the community. And so then her family came to one of their clinics, and they just
because of that,
because like she was against that rule, that taboo. So they just destroyed everything with the famous knives that we use to cut human heads. And I can't, when I was small, that was like a big like joke like that I loved to listen to. I loved like when my grandma was doing this, like body movements of how they came in with their knives and how they cut what. But as an adult looking back, it must be so tough to go through that. And then in the end, she had to quit the job and she had to marry this man from the village who was my grandpa, who was also a really great guy, but anyways. So she had to give up the job she got and her independence. And when Japan left, even then she told me it was great because she could still talk, has Japanese friends that she can talk, some stuff that she wouldn't be able to talk with her family in Japanese. But they all left because they lost the war. And so she lost all her friends. And now she was alone in this very conservative community. Whatever she took pride in, like her job, sounded like nothing. People laughed at her when she talked about her job. They were like, oh, again, like here comes her again talking about bullshit. And then it became the Republic of China. So her Mandarin was not great. So suddenly she became like like someone who had no education, no proper language, and she had to, to endure that being, what she is not. So it was really tough just to think about that. So I think when she was making fun, like when she was telling me this, many joke stories, actually, they came out from her real struggles. She sometimes acted like she was a queen of the tragedy, drama queen, but still.
Who doesn't sometimes?
I know, we're all drama queens. And I think I just love everything about her. Maybe, it's a grandma-granddaughter kind of relationship. If she was my mother, it could be a little bit different story, but she was my grandmother. So I remember when she sometimes asked me to buy magazines and books when I visited her from Japan, because she can read in Japanese. And also the funny thing is she always wants to shine. And I think she tried her best to shine. Ever since she was a little girl, she made herself shine so she could be a nurse, midwife. But when that was over, she still dressed up really nicely all the time. I had to learn a lot from her. I gave her some Japanese magazines and she checked some night creams and some some powders, and she always wanted me to buy these specific cosmetics. I just love how she wanted to be herself in whatever circumstances. And also these words that made me awake. We must sing, we must dance. It doesn't have to be real singing or dancing, but dance through whatever you do and sing your emotions in whatever form you love to take. So yeah, my grandma.
What an inspiring woman.
Thank you. I think she's listening to you. She's like, see, I am.
Thank you so much for sharing. But what was your grandma's name?
Yawai.
Yawai, about Grandma Yawai, and her lesson to all of us, especially for this coming weekend, to go out there and rejoice, sing, and dance.
Rejoice.
Oh, and tomorrow is Mother's Day, of course.
Oh, yes. Happy Mother's Day.
Lovely Sunday with your mom as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eri, for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me share my peculiar stories with everybody.
And dear listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed our conversation with Eri, then please give us some boost on social media, and don't forget to recommend this program to your friends. And of course, do come back next week for another one of Taiwan's fascinating languages. Once again, I was Oleg, and this was In Taiwan We Speak.